What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Talk of the Tundra, your Green Bay Packers podcast as part of the Eurostep Podcast Network and the Blue Wire family. As always, I am your loyal host, Numac, and joining me, as always, and I'm so happy he does, is my lovely co-host, Jordan Tresky. Jordan, how you doing, buddy?
Doing well, doing well. Happy June 1st, everybody. Happy June 1st. I don't know why I'm coming in very low. Very low.
I'm curious, this is for the video people only. What is the front and back of your hat? I know it's an NBA hat, but is
It's
it H?
It's my new Bucks hat.
Oh.
Hardwood Classics. Let me keep it
Oh.
classic here.
That's right. That's right. I was curious as to what the HWC was. I'm like, that for sure isn't the letters NBA. But I was very curious. Anywho's will be. We are back with another episode talking Bucks off season, particularly some more OTA stuff and some more plans they have for the preseason, as well as some comments from our All-Pro left tackle David Bakhtiari about just being in Green Bay and OTAs and sort of the narrative around the Packers season this year. Spoiler alert, he hates it. And we are going to official, no more after this episode, have our last Aaron Rodgers conversation about the Packers.
If I had a gavel, I'd be smashing it right now.
Smashing it.
Smash gavel.
Because Matt Schneidman had an article that got published in The Athletic, I believe, on Tuesday or Wednesday. I think it was earlier this week for sure, in which he sat down with Aaron Rodgers and talked about his time in Green Bay. But we'll leave that for the end, just in case any of you listeners don't care to listen to it, because I know for sure I don't want to talk about it. So let's start with the fun stuff first. The Packers officially scheduled a joint practice with the Cincinnati Bengals ahead of their preseason opener in Cincinnati. That's the second of the joint practices that they will have this year. That one against Cincinnati, and the other one will be against the Patriots, I believe. Is that right, Jordan?
Yes. No.
I think it
Is it?
was because
Yeah, it is.
I
Why
saw
am I
the
mixing this up?
I saw the meme of Matt LaFleur handing Bill Belichick
Yes.
money for or the other way around, Bill Belichick handing Matt LaFleur money for all
The
the Aaron
scouting
Rodgers
report.
notes. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
So, I think it'll be a great practice to have for the Packers, considering Bengals are one of the perennial Super Bowl favorite teams now that they have Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and just a pretty stout defense in the first place. So, getting some actual NFL talent, I shouldn't say actual NFL talent, but going against another quality NFL team to get Jordan Love those looks and the rest of the team those looks will be pretty helpful, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. I am. It's interesting that they are taking this approach with two of their three preseason games. Wait, are they the Patriots?
Yes, I think it's the Bengals, the Patriots, and somebody else. I'll look it up.
Chiefs?
Maybe. I don't know. I'm looking it up right now.
Okay.
Uh,
Um,
that is last year. Sorry, go ahead.
that's okay. That would be why I'm confused. I'm confusing last year's
Yep, it's
stuff.
away against the Bengals, and then a
Bengals,
home against the Patriots, and then home against the Seahawks.
Seahawks. There we go. Very interesting though that they are doing the joint practices, two of the three preseason games. Um, I don't know how they evaluate that, whether it's just because they have a younger team and it's like this is what we should be choosing to, or I don't know. I'm here on a podcast supposed to have an opinion, and I'm here to say I don't know what these are ultimately going to what is going to be gained or what they're looking for out of this, but early interesting kind of yardstick comparisons for them to kind of just see like how they match up against various teams, maybe stylistically, whatever. But yeah, interesting on the same.
It might be a good time for them to practice some of their looks and trying to see how some of the formations might work against two. I guess Patriots are going to be average, but Bengals should be good. And
Yeah,
just kind of give the offensive defense an opportunity to play those snaps and play some of the formations at like for real as opposed to just against their own team in the Packers.
yeah,
So ultimately, I'm a big fan of joint practices. I think it gets the teams focused a little more than they would if they just had, what is it, a month straight of just practicing against your own team. Like
yeah,
you always see the highlights, or I guess highlights, lowlights, whatever you want to call them, of teams getting chippy at practice. And that's because guys are fighting for their jobs and they're maybe getting a little restless that they want to actually get out there and play and go full speed, this, that, or the other. But ultimately, I think it does bring a team together more. It does good things for morale if like they do get chippy, as so long as they don't get like aggressively violent.
Yeah.
But having a good joint practice where there's uh, jawing and chirping and all the other, I guess I was gonna say teasing, but that's not right. That's not the vibe I'm looking for. It's basically competitiveness around those practices. I think is really good for the team and gives the opportunity for Jordan Love to throw against a team that hasn't seen what he can do yet, but also gets different looks from what he hasn't seen in practice the last 3 years, and then sees all the OTAs and all the training camp before these joint practices.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I guess we'll see what comes of it and how I guess it'll lead to the preseason.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Coach Matt LaFleur said Wednesday about joint practices. He goes, quote, or he says, quote, it changes up the monotony of training camp, I'd say. What's great about going to Cincinnati is it's going to give us a little bit of a longer bonding trip for our guys to hang out together. We think it's going to be a really valuable experience, which I think is common amongst the Matt LaFleur teams. Since he's taken over, I think they've
Yeah, I was
had
gonna
like
say
joint practice, I think, every year.
every year that they were able to,
Right. Exactly.
um, they're gonna go to Skyline Chili,
Ugh.
you know.
Keep noodles out of Skyline, or keep noodles out of Chili.
Noodle,
No
not my
nudes.
noodle.
No nudes.
Jesus.
Yeah, ultimately, I think me and Matt LaFleur are on the same wavelength. A little pat on my back there. But yeah, I think it'll just be overwhelmingly a good experience unless, like I said, things get overly aggressive and bad. But I think it also gives an opportunity to see how the secondary will be able to match up against a really high flying offense. Like between Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, and they have one more whose name I'm forgetting. It's Boyd, but I don't.
Tyler Boyd.
Is it Tyler Boyd?
Yeah.
I didn't know if that was his first name, but they can throw the ball with the best of them, and
Yeah.
that's
That's
going
gonna
to
be a tough
be
one.
a tough one to cover. Like depending on where they're sitting health wise in the secondary between Jair, Razul, Eric Stokes won't be back, but between Jair, Razul, Keyshawn Nixon, and then seeing how those safeties hold up, like that'll be a big test in those practices. I think you really don't know too much until you actually get on the field and start playing games for real. But it could be a bellwether for sure of how the season's going to go. Not to put too much stake at a joint practice, but it's definitely worth watching come whatever day that'll be.
Yeah.
Dope. Anything else on practices or things of that nature? Crab
No.
rangoons, anything like that?
No.
Shout out,
You're in
Steve.
your bag right
Shout
now.
out, Stephen A. Smith.
He doesn't need a shout out. Everybody knows who he is.
Off topic, shout out Josh Hart for being wild and giving us one of the all-time greatest Stephen A. Smith uh, commentaries. That was a good one. Moving on to Packers-related things. I think the writing is now etched in stone in the wall. Mason Crosby listed his Green Bay home for sale, and special teams coach Rich Bisaccia has said that the Packers are, quote, prepared to weather the storm with Anders Carlson. So he also added that it applies to all the Packers draft class and young developing players on their roster. So I guess end of an era, but not to say we didn't see it coming. I guess, do you have anything before we get into the Anders Carlson part of this comment? Anything about Mason Crosby?
No, I mean, yeah, it was already kind of telegraphed. I think we already talked about how his
Yeah.
wife essentially says the end.
Yeah, to small miles
Um,
in that tweet.
who knows if, this leads to, if it's the end of his playing career? That's ultimately the biggest question, but
Yeah.
one would assume that is the case, but you never know. You never know
I
who might hire a mercenary kicker out of retirement or unretirement.
Maybe. I think the biggest thing is that his leg strength hasn't been there the last couple seasons, and I think Goody talked about how he was battling injury, and he thinks that if the Packers did bring him back, that wouldn't be an issue. But
Yeah.
I don't know if I'm another team. I'm really looking to bring in near 40-year-old kicker with distance issues at this point in their career. Like the reason why Robbie Gould and all these sort of older kickers are nails when it comes to being kickers late in their career is because they still have that distance and they don't really miss.
Yeah.
Like Robbie Gould is about as automatic as you could probably get. Same thing with Adam Vinatieri and Stephen Kostelski towards the end of their careers. Like they were just nails. They couldn't miss. And that wasn't really the case with Mason Crosby his last couple of years in Green Bay. Like he had good percentages, but he wasn't really kicking on volume. And I
Yeah.
think if you're going to bring in a kicker at that age, you're probably looking for someone kicking on volume. And that just isn't really, I think, what he's cut out for at this point in his career.
Well, too, I mean, just think about how it is at Lambeau when it's, late November, all of December. I mean, you're playing at least one game in January,
Right.
hopefully a little bit more. But yeah, those are questions, and you have to ask those questions and decide answers well before it. Of like, are you comfortable doing that when it gets
Right.
in that situation? And it's like, if you're already going that far of conceding that maybe you're not, then you have to ask about future replacements,
Right.
who to pick as your Mason Crosby replacement. And obviously they drafted a kicker too, so that
Yeah.
pretty much telegraphed it where they stood.
And I think I was reading through your notes that we had shared about how Rich Bisaccia said he was comfortable weathering the storm as it pertains to Anders Carlson and the rest of the rookies and the young developing talent. It took me to like actually think. Like I needed to tell myself that the expectations for this team aren't high this year. If we lose games by a field goal or by an extra point or whatever, it isn't inherently bad. Like, sure, if it comes down to it where they miss the playoffs because of something like that, yeah, it would probably suck just because the parity in the NFL is so large. Anything can happen. And maybe that run is something special. But at the same time, I wouldn't be opposed to just getting another high end talent piece for this roster and then reevaluating kicker next offseason or something like that. Like
Yeah.
this season to me, and we've talked about this before, so I won't go too much into it, is it's all gravy. Either we know a lot about Jordan Love and how he's progressing as a quarterback, or and it's just like if it's good, it's good, cool, sweet. If it's bad, we get a high draft pick, and we still have another year of Jordan Love to figure out if we can try and change his trajectory towards something better than what he was this year. So that same thing goes with Anders Carlson. If he's like really bad and can't make an extra point, he probably won't be around long. But I think weathering the storm is kind of a good way to go about it when it comes to kicker in a year where you don't really have expectations. Like I think it'd be
Yeah.
different if he was coming into a team that had expectations, but I think that's sort of the way the Packers have made this roster is that everybody's young. Besides David Bakhtiari and some of the veterans they have and Preston Smith, everybody's young or on their second contract. So there's room to grow, and there isn't really that pressure of needing to make a Super Bowl or needing to make the NFC Championship. It's just let's go out there and give it our best to see where we are at as a team and evaluate it come the 2023-2024 offseason.
So with that in mind, would you say this is a rebuild?
I don't know why you gotta. I know it's what we're talking about next. It's a fantastic segue. It's a really good segue, but the discourse on it is just so annoying. What Jordan
Well,
is
David Bakhtiari's got some thoughts about
he has some
it.
thoughts. Obviously, the Packers are in a new era. We've talked about that too and used that exact phrase, but
No
peop
cap.
no cap.
That's funny. That's a good joke right there.
The people around the Packers and people on Packers Twitter and the media, this, that, etc., have been throwing around the term rebuild as it comes to the Packers' upcoming season. And the Packers themselves, I think outwardly mostly, have been trying to avoid that word and using the word retool instead. And Dave Bakhtiari, noted best friend of Aaron Rodgers, felt he had to put his cape on and start talking talking to people, making sure that everyone knows that we're rebuilding here in Green Bay. And I guess I'll read one of the quotes before we get into it and discussion. This is from David Bakhtiari on Wednesday after some OTA practices. Quote, to me, flat out how I look at it, it's disrespectful to say you're not rebuilding off of a Hall of Fame quarterback. It was disrespectful to say you weren't rebuilding off of Brett Favre when you moved on to Aaron. No one knew who Aaron was going to be, so I'm not going to sit here and pull back those words because that is, when you look at how it's been building, how we're chasing after it, and the cap. There was a bunch of situations that can definitely allude to it. We have a young team, end quote. So I guess I'm not sure if he's really like just trying to make sure everyone knows Aaron Rodgers is still good, or if he's just annoyed with the place that the team is in. But before I give my thoughts, I guess what were your thoughts on the initial, like, as that initial quote?
I mean, I think it obviously has merit. It's regardless of what you want to talk about it, the fact that the Packers roster hasn't really changed all by much. Um, I'm sure when we get to like the final cuts and stuff like that, it'll be interesting to see like who is actually on the roster this year versus last year, because we're largely talking about the same guys. But in terms of a singular presence, Aaron Rodgers is not on this team anymore, and it's Jordan Love. And I would agree with David Bakhtiari. It's a rebuild. I would also say that doesn't mean that they are any less motivated to win. That much is clear. How well you're going to win, how capable of winning you're going to be, that's a different question with a fourth year quarterback that has only made one start in his NFL career versus a 4-time MVP and future Hall of Famer.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, like I understand what David Bakhtiari is saying and what he's defending and all his comments that stem from the podcast appearance that he did like a month ago or something like that.
Something like that.
It all feels like a lot of hullabaloo in June.
I think that's a great way to put it. It's a bunch of hullabaloo in June. Like, I don't
The title
know.
of this episode.
I don't know if it's just my general mood this week. I've been a little cranky, a little inside look.
Cranky Al.
Yes, cranky L's, cranky Numacs. Um, but we'll get to the other part later. But the Matt Schneeman article about Aaron Rodgers and now David Bakhtiari's comments, they just seem needlessly dramatic. Like, David Bakhtiari didn't need to come into the OTA practices, to which he had mentioned he was only there to get paid money anyways. More power to him. I'm not gonna rag on a guy for showing up to OTAs just for money, but I think it's just like you really didn't need to come here and stir the pot like that. It doesn't really help anybody to make that clarification public to the media and tell the fans. Like, sure, you could feel that people are disrespecting Aaron Rodgers because they're not calling it a rebuild. Like, say what you will about that. Is that really the focus that I want one of my veteran leaders to have? Not really. And that's kind of been my tone with David Bakhtiari throughout the offseason, is just that it seemed like a lot of whining. Like, a lot of whining. And he's, like, also said, like, I'll read another quote that he said during OTAs, or during this media interview at his locker. He said, sorry. Oh, here we go. He said he continued about his recovery and his journey back from his career-altering injuries. Quote, honestly, I'm having a great time when I am back. Having fun, good conversations when I'm on the field with anyone. We understand the expectation, understand where it's at. That's kind of been cool. So he's saying he's having fun playing football and he's having fun like with this team and everything. But again, it's just like the juxtaposition of having those positive, uplifting comments that things are going well on the field and there's a good team around them, but also just stirring the pot that he's also ragging on the administration and whoever else not calling it a rebuild. It's we don't need it. We just really don't need those comments. Like, I get it. I get it. I get it. I get it. Your best friend got traded. You probably want out as well. I get it.
Well,
I just don't care for the drama. Like we were supposed to be done with this. This is why, again, foreshadowing. We're talking about the former quarterback one last time on this freaking podcast, and that'll be it. I'm just very over the entire situation. Like
yeah.
I really wish people would just stop effing talking about it
Oh,
because neither one of that like Rodgers isn't a Packer anymore. He's
yeah.
over in New York doing his own thing.
That trade was a month and a half ago at this point.
Exactly. And between like don't get me wrong, I love the Packers NFL beat writers. Like they're really good. But it
Oh,
it seems that they just can't quit the Rodgers content stream. Like they just want that one more hit. All those all those interactions and all of those impressions that they get on their articles. Like
you
I
see
don't
that he went to Taylor Swift's concert?
twice, Jordan, the two time.
Two time.
Um and it's just like man alive. We have a really exciting cool like start to this team and I get it. I get it. It is the off season. There's nothing happening. The only content we have out there is bitching and moaning about a trade that happened a month and a half ago about a guy that's been upset with the team for 3.5 years.
If
I
not
get it.
longer.
Football needs to happen. But Jesus Christ, I'm just sick of the drama. And like I guess that's just me letting it out. I want
Just wait. There's more.
I just want David Bakhtiari to be a positive influence on this football team, like he's showing he can do, talking about how on the field practice is going without going, but and we have to have a conversation about the disrespect to the 4-time MVP. It's just like, oh my,
I am his blind side.
it's just like, I'm just over it. I'm just over it. And I really wish that it'd be July 31st by now or whenever
Yeah.
training camp starts.
Well, I should to continue hat tipping my hat to Matt Schneeman. He notes in his article about Bakhtiari's comments and just his overall feelings on the state of the franchise. Sans Aaron Rodgers, number 12, the best player to play for the Packers, allegedly, according to Aaron Rodgers. Um, Bakhtiari has 2 years left on his contract extension signed in the middle of the 2020 season, but cutting him after the season would free up $21.5 million in cap space. That is a very good contextual feeling of where he is at. And he talks about how being on the other side of it and, coming into Green Bay and what that meant for guys like TJ Lang, Josh Sitton, Corey Linsley, Brian Bulaga, and just seeing how it is. So, like, it is no different than how it was with Aaron. It's when you're on the other side of 30 and, Bakhtiari's had a very different career in the last 2 years, obviously, 3 years, ever since undergoing that knee injury. And they've done their really damnedest to get him back on track. And last year was a very good sign of what he could still be. Despite some shaky starts, literally or not literally, because he missed some games. But this is what happens. You get a little secure, and you understand how it's a business, and you kind of get jaded by it. And I think I will save the rest of my comments because it easily applies to where this conversation is going to be headed. But for Bakhtiari's sake, he knows it's coming to an end, and yeah, he's doing his best to embrace what it means. But these comments will look a lot different if the Packers are if they look like a young and rebuilding team on the field come September and October. And what is that going to look like? With I would assume a captain.
Yeah.
Going into this year. I don't know. That'll be interesting to see how it plays out.
And for what it's worth, like I don't think they were exactly wrong in cutting those players. Like between Brian Bulaga, Corey Linsley, Josh Sitton, and TJ Lang, Corey Linsley is really the only one that went on to have some sort of successful career. uh, excuse me, after the Packers. And but otherwise, TJ Lang was fine in Detroit. He wasn't that good. Josh Sitton, same thing. Brian Bulaga, I think, also went to the Chargers. I think had like 1 or 2 playable years before he got hurt again.
Yeah, if I remember correctly,
It wasn't
he was
long.
pretty banged up.
And so it's not like the Packers are cutting all pro talent when they're still in the middle of their all pro careers. It's cutting. It's the old Ron Wolf way of running the Packers. Cut them 1 year early rather than 1 year late.
Yep.
And I don't disagree with it. It's they talk about it in that Bakhtiari article about how it's always a business, and Rodgers talked to Dave about it. But when Charles Woodson got let go, like it's a business, and so of course I want to see Dave Bakhtiari succeed. He's been one of the best tackles in football for the better part of half a decade, and for what it's worth, like if push comes to shove and he wants out, I wouldn't be opposed to sending him to a contender just because I want him to succeed. Just let him like you know what I already got it. You know who could use a left tackle? Those Cincinnati Bengals in the joint practice. We'll take one Jamar Chase. It's fine. All pro for all pro. Well, it's all good. Don't ignore the injuries. Ignore the age. Just look at the stats, the accolades. But that's what I'm saying. Like stuff like that. Like if come week 6 when the trade deadline is going and the Packers are 0-5 or however whatever the record is, sure, maybe you trade David Bakhtiari for picks or other players and let him go chase a ring. Same thing at the end of his year this year. If they want to say, hey, appreciate it, like we know you aren't going to get what you want here, we'll cut you. You can go sign somewhere where you think you have the best opportunity to win a Super Bowl.
Yeah.
So
No, no,
we'll see. All in
yeah.
all, I'm sick of it.
What's next?
Oh God, this is your warning, listener. If you wish to hear us talk about Aaron Rodgers one last time, stick around. Please stick around. We would appreciate if you stuck around. But Tuesday, I think it was. Let's
Wednesday.
see, Wednesday. Matt Stieman published an article titled "Aaron Rodgers, comma the Packers and the long succession." Quote: "Just tell the truth. You wanted to move on." I read this article, and I don't think my eyes could have rolled back farther into my freaking head than they already did.
It was an exclusive.
It was an exclusive of things we already fucking knew. I'm sorry to get explicit, but I'm angsty. I'm annoyed that this was again just why. For those of you people who haven't read the article, you don't need to. You'll get all you need to know right here, right now. It was a 10-minute read, 15-minute read, however
A lot
long.
less.
Yeah, I'm a slow reader, despite reading for a living. Of a read, per se, of things we already knew. That Rodgers didn't like Brian Gutekunst. He wanted him fired. Well, I shouldn't say that. Let me back up. I'm putting words in his mouth. His agent, I think it's David Dunn, right? That's his.
David Dunn, yes.
Called Mark Murphy with a request and said, fire Gutekunst or trade Rodgers. This was early in the 2021 offseason. Obviously, that didn't happen. Rodgers stuck around for another 2 years, right? Yeah,
Yeah.
that's how math works.
Yes.
Um, and things were peachy keen for the most part. The entirety of the article was everything we already knew. He didn't like Goody. He was upset that he didn't know about Jordan Love being drafted. He was upset at the sort of talking out of both sides of your mouth the Packers allegedly did when they said they wanted him back earlier this offseason. And really, that was pretty much it. Like, what do you think? Like, I guess what were your thoughts reading the article? Because, again, I just wanted to just not read it.
I mean, it's fair. Um,
What's fair? Me not wanting to read it or the content?
I mean, the content is great. I mean, this is no shot towards Matt Sheeman or it ultimately feeds what people want out of it because people, it does. We know what it is. We
Mm.
know what it is. I'm just very glad that Aaron Rodgers was able to, finally get it off his chest about why. That's a joke because he's talking about play. Yeah, it is a very uh, tired mess of just stating what he has felt like, and I don't begrudge any athlete for speaking out, and I rather have players say freely how they feel about the current state of things. Yeah, I mean, rather than cookie
Right.
cutter answers, like we appreciate honesty from I mean, like
It's a
that.
spectrum, and
Yeah,
Rodgers early in his career was on one side, and he's went to the way other side now.
yeah, and it's I like there the from what I remember, I don't think it was reported that the his agent who serves his players
Yeah. Make sure
asked
we are crystal clear on that.
yeah, I'm just state that for everybody here. I'm going to state it again. The agent who serves his players
Hmm.
um, asked for the Packers to either trade Rodgers or fire Brian Gutekunst. And if that was out there, then I apologize. But
I don't think it was.
what a massive play, and to ultimately lose,
Yeah. To ultimately lose.
to ultimately miss out on that request, at least for 2 years.
Also, I'll huff the copium and drink the Kool Aid. Go Packers not letting that slip to the media. Like I don't know
Yeah,
how that didn't come out between whoever. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
that's pretty shocking that it didn't come out.
yeah. Um, I'm trying to think of other like kind of tidbits or bombshells from the article. But yeah, I just because I get the sentiment of talking about ultimately like we are very tired of it because we have lived through every scenario of
Yeah.
he's gonna leave, he's gonna leave, he's gonna leave, he's gonna get traded, he's gonna get traded, he wants out for the last 2 years, if not longer.
Hmm.
Essentially since Jordan Love was drafted.
Right.
And he said as much. It was very interesting that the Packers themselves insulated Matt LaFleur
Oh, that's where
because
I was gonna go next too. Yeah.
yes, and they put it on Brian Gutekunst of this is his selection. We follow his lead, kind of thing. Aaron Rodgers saw through it for what it is
Yeah.
because it represents the entire team.
Yeah.
Um, but ultimately, I think it stems from the fact that Aaron Rodgers wanted to finish his career with the Green Bay Packers. And ultimately, what was good for the Packers with Aaron Rodgers changed from that to what is good for the Packers is without Aaron Rodgers.
Right.
And
The
it's hard to process that for some people,
including
including the
Aaron
player. Yeah.
Rodgers. um, which kind of goes back to the Dave Bakhtiari comment we said last segment like on my radio show 5 minutes ago. We talked about just it
We're
being
just talking to Dave and
yeah.
his
Well,
comments about
when referencing it's a business, like you can
yeah,
understand it's a business as much as you can try to understand it. Like
until it
having
happens to you.
until it happens to you, it's tough.
Yeah.
But the shielding Matt LaFleur comment that Jordan referenced was a quote from the article about this. That was the worst way to put it, but this is from the article. The Packers knew Rodgers wouldn't be happy about the selection, and to protect the relationship between him and head coach Matt LaFleur, they told him the decision to draft Wolf was strictly Brian Gutekunst. This is from Rodgers. Quote, I had friends who said, I guess, new quote, hey, Matt looked super excited when they made the draft pick. Rodgers said, I don't care, honestly. Like they made the pick. They all signed off on it. So,
Mhm.
yeah, like you said, Rodgers saw through it. And I think I'm knowing that this was 2020 when this happened, the comments from everybody in the situation, Matt, Brian, Aaron, all of them, they kind of now looking back, hindsight 2020 and everything, just look like they're just kind of words and not actions, which
Yeah.
is part of why Rodgers was so mad these past 3 years, is he wanted more actions rather than words, and credited Russ Ball with actually trying to help rebuild that relationship, not retool it, rebuild it. By the way, um, saying that Russ Ball was really the only one. I think he is. I forget
His title.
his title.
I can get
It's in
that
the
right now.
article. I just can't find.
I think it's just like cap guy, but he is the executive vice president, director of football operations for the Green Bay Packers.
Yes. So good. I think it's more of like been like Russ Ball and Brian Gutekunst are on like the same level ish. They just do different things.
Yeah.
Um, but I guess good on him for trying to make that work, and at least somebody was trying to do that in Aaron's eyes. I think if like Russ hadn't been doing that, I keep saying like first name basis because I don't feel like saying whole names, but if Russ Ball hadn't,
Mr. Ball.
that Mr. Ball hadn't been working on that relationship, it might have been a little more tenuous over the last few years than previously anticipated, or as we saw. So I guess it's fine overall. The it's there was like some Devonte Adams drama in there too about how
That
Aaron
was, yeah.
I think that was misplaced, frankly. But I think it was Rodgers saying,
Also,
reporting rather,
this is the point of Aaron Rodgers' extension kind of hamstrung what the
yeah,
Packers did. That's I think if I have any gripe with this is that it loses some context of stuff that didn't happen all that far off
yep,
ago.
yep, right.
Um,
Because Rodgers signed a 3 year, $150 million deal last year, and because of
yeah.
that, they were really tight on their cap, and they apparently Rodgers is saying that they offered Devonte Adams less money than Christian Kirk had, which was around $18 million a year. And
Mhm.
Devonte Adams wanted to be, this was, I believe, 2021, right? Yes. No, 2020, I believe. Before, like, because they had extension talks and then play the season.
Yeah, the Last Dance year because that was
Yes,
a
the
big bit
last
of
dance year.
yeah.
So 2020, pre that, is when they offered him around $18 million, and he wanted to be up near DeAndre Hopkins at 28 million or 27 and a quarter. And at that point, Devontae said, "No, I'm not doing negotiations during the season," and then ultimately left and got traded to the Raiders.
Which, if there, we knew that eventually was that he soured as negotiations went on
Yeah,
because they could only offer so much,
right,
which is missing from the article.
right, exactly. And so I think that that is not the greatest argument per se. Like I think Devontae was out regardless. Aaron said he didn't think so. I think we all knew, frankly.
Yeah,
And so he goes and talks about OTAs and how he didn't show up because he doesn't think there's going to be a whole lot of work being done and progress being made during OTAs with rookies, which I think is a load of bullshit. Like, it just shows your commitment. Like, I understand that it's not really hard practices, but it's reps, right? And you just needed those reps with rookie receivers. Like, I don't think you can really do that without just getting the reps. Like he called the Rodgers says Rodgers. This is from the article. Rodgers didn't show up to voluntary OTAs after the team drafted Roman or Christian Watson and fellow receivers Romeo Dobbs and Samari Toure, among others. The quarterback didn't feel like his presence was as important as the team did, saying any progress made during voluntary OTAs is quote very nominal. Like, sure, it may be small, but any sort of progress is progress with frickin' rookies. It doesn't matter if it's nominal progress. It's still progress. They're players who haven't been on the field with you. This is the kind of things that matter. Like, sure, is David Bakhtiari not being there? Like if he wasn't there in OTAs this offseason, for example, is that really going to bother the offense that much? No, probably not. Because the basics of pass blocking and run blocking are much simpler and much easier for him to understand because he's a left tackle. Like he knows his job pretty darn well
Yeah.
to execute just in training camp. He doesn't need the reps with Jordan Love. They're not exchanging the handoff. There's maybe one or two checks at the line that they might need to go through, but they don't overlap in, I guess, needing to do like conduct the offense. A quarterback and his number one and number two wide receivers need those reps. And I don't know if you can point to any exact play this past season that points to maybe if they had more time in the offseason, they had a better time or had more complete passes. But damn it, it probably would have helped at some point.
Yeah. That was very interesting. Justifying why I didn't want to show up early. And yeah, I understand you won MVP by not doing the same.
He says as much.
He says as much.
Quote,
Okay.
sorry, I'm going to interrupt you.
Yeah, no,
Quote,
you.
when I'm in, I'm all in. And you want to ride with off-season workouts. Me, interrupting. Yes, Aaron. Quote, I won MVP without doing off-season workouts. Like, was my commitment any less then? I'd say not at all. Me interjecting again. Of course you wouldn't. Why would you admit to having less commitment? Because, oh my God. Begin quote again. The way that I come back to work, not just physically in good shape, but mentally refreshed, is the best thing for me to have the season I wanted to have during those in Green Bay. I think that's just a cop out written to try and find something to disparage me about that. Honestly, when you know what offseason workouts are really about, it's completely ridiculous. This is like peak Aaron in that I know so much more than you. And any criticism of how I, a Hall of Fame level quarterback and four-time MVP, am absent of criticism. You can't criticize me because ultimately I know the game more than you. And I'm going to get weirdly like online right now. It's the most absurd level argument of you, media member, have never played football.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't talk about it. You can't talk about it. Like you don't know as much as I do, which isn't true, right? Like there's so many great minds out there that can recognize football schemes and tactics and all this stuff without ever having to play the game. And I don't think it's appropriate for Aaron Rodgers to say he's absent of this criticism. It's a cop out to say that he can't show up to OTAs and practice these rookies. I think it's completely ridiculous. And it's just him, again, being dramatic and trying to justify all of this relationship with the Packers he had. And it's exhausting. It's exhausting, Jordan. I'm like Mike or Don LaGreca right now from New York Sports Radio. I want to take this mic and just rip it out of my fucking desk.
Yeah. Yeah. I got,
Oh my God.
I think the same, your anger or just like frustration with just this whole subject, that was me reading the blow, like hit by hit of like the communication breakdown. Cause that essentially, this is what it is. It's
Yeah.
two pretty terrible communicators or whatever. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
these aren't people that are friends. They were acquaintances and coworkers, you know, essentially.
Yeah.
And you're just seeing that played out time and time again. And Aaron Rodgers is more than willing to flame Brian Gutekunst, who does not have that much time, energy, or patience to really just keep talking about it because what's done is done. But again, this is stuff that happens when you're with a franchise that you thought you were going to end your career with, and that you were with nearly 2 decades.
Mm-hmm.
And it just, you can tell by the way that he talks about things, it hurts.
Yeah.
And it
He's really
stings.
hurt.
He's really hurt. And it's, I don't know.
I never expected him to be more emotionally mature than he seemingly is. Because like we kind of like knew this, but like I never really expected this type of reaction out of like anything Aaron Rodgers has done, frankly. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like he's always kind of like stoic and kind of well thought out about these things.
but
He's in his feelings.
it is very different when he talks about just the state of the last 3 years. And granted, another thing to consider here, when you're reading the words, it comes off more stern.
Yeah.
You're not hearing his voice. At the same time, we have heard him say these things as much.
Yeah.
So it doesn't really replace what he's the substance of what he has to say. And yeah, like I don't know. None of this again was revolutionary or revelatory or life changing. It
Yeah.
has just rehashed what the last 3 years has been like. And if anything, if there's one thing to take away from this, is that I am glad to be off the ride. And
Thank God.
it is not a denigration of what Aaron Rodgers means to the Green Bay Packers because he ultimately had the biggest shoes to fill in franchise history. One of.
Yeah.
Maybe that was a little too big of a thing to say, but certainly of modern history of just like replacing Brett Favre.
Yeah.
Um, and he kept the thing going. He kept the machine going. He helped and really was the primary reason why they were competitive for as long as they were. You know, in the face of change, in the face of, you're a Super Bowl contender, but you fell short and all that stuff. I don't know. I just like it. I understand why these things, why it will. This is not the stop. This is not the end. As much as we are going to be, or going to stop talking about
We are gonna stop talking about him. I'm gonna have an aneurysm.
it. I lost my train of thought after.
We're gonna keep talking about him. This isn't done.
Well, we're good
We're
as a
done.
podcast.
As a
We are
podcast,
done.
we are done. Not now, not the
That is,
second, but after this episode.
yeah, yeah. Um, that is not the case for New York media, Green Bay media, the NFL media at large, because we're less than 100 days out from the start of the NFL season. There's
Woo!
a lot of downtime to talk about things.
Right.
But it will be. This is it. This is what it'll be until he retires, or if not longer. We went through this with Favre. We're gonna do it again with Rodgers.
I think it's worth noting what I noted to you when I read the article. The most like surprising quote of the entire thing. Um, talking about, I guess we'll go. I'll read these 3 paragraphs and I'll talk about it. Excuse me. Rodgers said he entered the darkness retreat thinking he would retire, but emerged feeling good about either retiring or continuing to play. He contacted Dunn, who told Rodgers the Packers had been shopping him. Rodgers then told Dunn to tell Gutekunst he wanted to be traded to the Jets. He didn't have much else to say to the GM. Quote, did Brian text me more than I texted him? Yeah. But did I ghost him? No, Rodgers said. I texted him back. There were back and forths that we had, and so this is the story you want to go with. This is him talking to Brian Gutekunst, essentially, while talking to Matt Steeman. This is the story you want to go with. You're going to stand on this hill of austerity and say that that arguably in the conversation of the best player in your franchise history, you're going to say I couldn't get a hold of him and that's why we had to move on. Quote, like, come on, man. Just tell the truth. You wanted to move on. You didn't like the fact that we didn't communicate all the time. Like, listen, I talk to the people that I like. We knew this. But it's the most...
Specifically, men in black tank tops.
What's up?
He likes talking to men in black tank tops.
Correct. Do you, Jordan, do you realize how fucking bass backwards this last quote is?
Mm-hmm.
You didn't like the fact that we didn't communicate all the time. Like, listen, I talk to the people that I like. Motherfucker, you are half the problem. Like, if you are mad that... If you think Brian Coons is mad that they don't talk to you all the time, you have to do your part of the work to make the relationship work. Like, if you're mad, like, if you think Brian Gutekunst is mad that you don't talk all the time, maybe try repairing that relationship with him, like Russ Ball did, and make it work. And make it work, right? Like, it's such a paradox of you're mad that we didn't communicate all the time. Well, I only talk to people that I like. And that's why I'm mad at you for moving on from me. Like, it's just, it's bonkers logic. Just bonkers logic. And... I'm sick of it.
Aaron Rodgers seems like the last person I would want to have an argument with.
Yeah, he'd be the most insane person to argue with. Like,
He would not quit it. He would not give up on it.
no, I know people like this, and
Mhm.
it's exhausting. And I think I think I would just quit after like two sentences of a conversation with Aaron Rodgers. Like I used to think it like he might be, and this is like getting a little far on ragging on him, but I'm frustrated. He might be like one of the epitome of like don't meet your heroes uh kind of
Yeah.
stars. Uh why am I blanking? Famous people. Famous people.
Yeah. Yep.
Like it's just like, yeah, he seems like pretty cool, pretty guy, pretty good football, that Aaron Rodgers. Sit down have a conversation with him, you're gonna be like Seneca Wallace or whatever freaking back quarterback that was, Tavares Jackson, I think it was, or whoever it was, about 9/11 and how he needs to do some more research on it. You're giving me a quizzical look. Do you not know this?
Rest in peace, Tavares Jackson, I believe.
Did you just kill Tavares Jackson?
No, I think he's dead.
Did not know that. Whoever it was, there was a Packers. He did 2020. Didn't know
Yeah.
that.
I think it was like a car accident.
There was a backup quarterback. I'm pretty sure it was Seneca Wallace or some other backup who they like his their
Is this
first
a
time.
Steve Kimes situation?
No, it's not. The first time they
Okay.
sat down and talked to Aaron Rodgers. Um,
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, I
he
know
talked about
exactly what you're saying.
9/11.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Like what the fuck? So okay, Jordan, do you have
It's been
anything else to
adjourned.
say?
No. Are you ready?
Yep, this is
I'm going to loudly click my pen on the microphone. This noise
okay.
will symbolize we will never talk about Aaron Rodgers
Outside
ever
of
again.
football, like
Yeah,
once football season comes around,
yeah.
if it pertains to the Packers,
So from September
so
to,
from September to January,
yeah,
in football context only, we are allowed to talk Aaron Rodgers. Until then, zilch, nada. Nobody heard the pen click. Just people who watch on the YouTube saw his Jordan's thumb move, but I promise that there was a click of the pen ceremoniously. You're still nothing. Um, I think a more appropriate noise would have been the gong from couples therapy. That's what I wanted to
yeah.
go with. So, all right. Anything else, Packers, that we should talk about? I think we're
Deshaun Kaiser was the quarterback.
Deshaun Kaiser. Yep.
Mhm.
That I knew it was like that one of those mid-10 backups that never panned out.
Yeah, to say the least.
Okay. Anything else? I think we went through it all.
No, I think this is a momentous occasion. Numac got angry.
Is this the first
Lovely.
time? This is like the first time. I don't think it's like
Extended rage.
yeah.
I think during the season you like were peaking. Now you're fully the red. You're just like, that kind of thing.
But all right, that does it for us. You know the drill. I'm gonna talk about Repod. JoinRepod.com/chocolate tundra. You can go there, have comments, discuss with other people like yours truly that just might be upset about a former Packers quarterback. Other people like my other co-host who is ready for the Jordan Love era. Other fans of Talk on the Tundra. All things GSPN over at Repod. Join Repod /Talk on the Tundra /Cruising for a Bruising /Eurostep /Win in 6 make time for this. I think that's it. So
Yep.
go over there, download the app.
Actually, Eurostep Win 6 is on that same feed.
Oh, this, that, the other. Same difference. Same but different. We would appreciate it. Please go download it. Go talk over there. We love it. So GSPN wise, as always, go to gspn.info to see the latest and greatest things of the Eurostep Podcast Network. But I'm trying to think what order I should go in. Let's start with Make Time for This, because Adam McGee, Andrew Snyder, will be discussing the series finale of Succession very soon. But they also have published a pod since the other Succession pod about Ari Aster's Beau is Afraid, and having recently watched a couple more Ari Aster movies, such as I saw my first one of
Hereditary.
Hereditary a couple months ago. Terrifying, absolutely soul-shakingly scary.
I think you're like,
Um,
everyone sit down and watch Midsummer.
and I sat and watched Midsummer, that movie, since we're already like explicit. That movie,
Yeah.
fucked. Straight fucked. Would not recommend. Well, I should say that. Would recommend to anybody watching it.
Yeah.
Very, very good. Just
Hmm.
would watch it sober. Do not elicit any sort of illegal drugs while watching the movie. Have a very bad time. This never mind. Um, yeah, but I want to see Beau is Afraid now because it is probably amazing, just like the rest of Ari Aster's filmography that I've been told. Ari Aster, maybe Psycho. Who's to say?
Great question.
Who's to say?
It's just,
um, moving on to the Bucks feed. Uh, let's see. Eurostep. Ty Rohan released a pod on Tuesday, further
mhm.
reflecting on Adrian Griffin's hire and some finals predictions. Adrian Griffin, notably as of 8:40 p.m. Central Standard Time, not officially been announced as the new coach of the Bucks after breaking over Memorial Day weekend. Um, in which case, Jordan and Adam are waiting to record Win in Six to talk about such official announcement. So keep checking the Eurostep feed for that Win in Six pod when it comes, because it will. It always comes. And then cruising for bruising. The Brewers are down horrendous right now, but that doesn't mean that Adam and Andrew still aren't making great podcasts. Anyways, they just had their 100th episode, um, featuring their first guest appearance with Kurt Hogue, right? Hogue? Yeah. He is the Milwaukee Brewers beat writer for the Journal Sentinel. They talked about Devin Williams' pitch and sort of how he's talked about around the MLB, all their prospects, and just the season in general and how it's going. There'll be a pod up, I would assume, Friday as you're listening to this, recapping the Blue Jays series as the Brewers, I think, take one of three. I think they lost
Yeah.
two. Yeah, lost the first and third. So, but I think still first place Brewers, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, they are.
It's geez Louise. So I believe that's all the podcasts. That is it from your explicit, ranty, frustrated, cranky host. I promise to be happier next week. Thank you all for listening. Come back and leave us 5 stars, rate, review, all that good stuff. We'd appreciate it. And Jordan, thank you, buddy.
Thank you.